Hi, Gene Monterastelli here, the editor of tappingqna.com. The video that you are about to watch is a conversation that was a part of this year's 24 Hours of Tapping. The 24 Hours of Tapping is a fundraiser for the amazing work that is done by the Peaceful Heart Network. The Peaceful Heart Network has brought tapping to migrants, refugees, prisoners, and the underprivileged in over 30 countries all over the world. As you watch this video, if you learned something, if you were touched by it, if you were inspired by it, the easiest way to say thank you is to support the work of the Peaceful Heart Network. To do that, all you need to do is go to 24hoursoftapping.com/support. And as you look in the description and the first comment down below, you will see a direct link to that. I hope you enjoy this conversation. What I want to do now is I want to share with you a conversation with Karen Donaldson. Karen Donaldson helps women stop emotionally eating, eliminating cravings so they can lose weight and keep it off. Karen is a registered dietitian, an EFT certified weight loss coach, an emotional code certified practitioner, and a weight loss mindset expert. She's helped thousands of women stopping food to tranquilize their emotion or to feel better. She does this by helping women to release the emotional baggage that triggers them, their nighttime eating, their binge eating, and their stress eating. And she helps women to create new beliefs in their subconscious mind to guide them to successfully release excess weight and keep it off. Here is my conversation with Karen. So one of the things I'm always interested in when folks say, hey, I want to talk about this thing,
Yep.
What is it that brought you to wanting to talk about, think about, and work with professionally the sense of using tapping for cravings and emotional eating and all that goes along with that?
Really good question and very important. Pretty much because I had a problem that I couldn't solve on my own. I'm a registered dietitian. I would teach people all day long what you should eat and how to make this happen. And then I would go home at night and binge on a big bowl of popcorn, tons of butter, followed up by like some waffles with powdered sugar and then some corn tortilla chips. And I'm like, whoa, this is not good. You can't even do what you're asking your clients to do all day long, and pretty hypocritical as well. So they would tell me, I can't do this and that sounds good, but I wasn't able to make it happen. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is me too. I can't do it either. But it was embarrassing. I should have known how to do it with all the education I had, but I couldn't. So I thought there's got to be something different that could help with this. And thankfully, stumbled across tapping. It was one of those serendipitous things where emails just kept showing up in my inbox. And finally, I'm like, I should probably read these. I think there's a message here. And so I finally read the emails. I'm like, oh, there's an emotional attachment and there's an emotional connection and things going on outside. It's not just about the food. And so I kept reading the emails, which led me to learn how to use tapping, started practicing a little bit on myself and was getting some results, but I was like, is this really going to work for other people? And I remember my very first tapping client, she was referred by her doctor to come see me for like diabetes and nutrition and all that. And I just had this feeling like there's so much more to the story. So I asked her name's Melinda, and she's happy that I share her story. Melinda, I get a feeling that there's more going abuse and different things that had happened. So we started doing some tapping, and within a few sessions, her emotional eating was pretty much gone. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting, but tapping was still new. This was like over 20 years ago. I'm like, should you tell your doctor? Should you not tell your doctor? Because it was one of those things. So I was the woo-woo dietitian. Now I tell all the doctors, and they're like, okay, whatever you do, we're good with it. Just do it. Just help people with their cravings and eating. So that was really the start of it. And it was so empowering to be able to help other people, but honestly, also to be able to help myself so that I didn't have to be critical about it and preach it all day long, but not be able to do it. So that's the reason why I do this, because there is hope and it can change, but I didn't know how to do it until I started to learn how to do tapping.
Yeah. And so thank you for sharing that. And as you kind of both cravings and emotional eatings in the title. I love to hear how you define those particular terms, because in the moment I'm putting things that I don't want to be putting into my body, and it could be the same experience, it could be different experience. You've given it two different names. When you think of those two things, what do you think of?
With cravings, I think more of just this immediate, oh my gosh, I have to have this. And it's really focused on your mind. And you would do whatever you could to go get it. Like I used to stop at a place on the way home from work and pick up a carton of raw cookie dough and eat it before I got home because I had a severe craving for that right then. I think it's similar to emotional eating. Emotional eating, I think, might be a little bit deeper. So usually what's gone on earlier in your life that is triggering this? Is there a trauma? Is there a belief? I think it's a fine line. I think it could be either cravings or emotional eating. But I know that I've had many women say that food just has a power over me right now. It's a craving. She had cravings for Skinny Pop popcorn. And she would purposely find a way to go to Costco and it just happened to see Skinny Pop popcorn. So, so I need something else. So we neutralized that particular food for her. And then the next time she went to Costco, she's like, oh, there's the Skinny Pop display. And she goes, I don't need you anymore. And she walked on by. So that's a good example of how we can neutralize a craving. But then, like for the client that I mentioned at the beginning, she had a lot of trauma early on in her life, history of sexual abuse and lots of other things. A lot of emotions contribute to her using food to feel better, like a lot of the time. Stress, trauma, overwhelm, anxiety. So I think that's the distinction I would make.
And so then when you have someone coming to you and you're trying to be helpful with them, how are you introducing tapping into this? Like what does the process look like as I'm managing? Because like it would seem to me, and I'd love to hear you talk about this, there might be things that we're doing in the moment when I'm experience the thing, and there are things that we can do out of the moment so those moments happen less often. Is that accurate? How do you think about that? How do you approach that stuff when you're actually working with someone?
Yes. So definitely, you've so kindly put my webinar up on the screen. That webinar is a free training that explains all the different steps that go into how to stop cravings and emotional eating. So two things. With a craving or something in the moment, we would work on how to calm down like the fight or flight response. That's a big deal for a lot of people. Like, oh my gosh, I just have to have this right now. So there are definitely techniques that you can do and related to tapping and pressure points on the body that will calm that down. They give you a fighting chance to not go get that food. But then if we're working at a deeper level, which of course I do with my clients, then we're using tapping to let go of traumas from their childhood, to let go of sabotaging beliefs, and then to create new beliefs so that they don't have to keep repeating those same patterns over and over. So there are many, many techniques. Tapping is one of the best ones that I use. There are some other ones that I use as well to help get rid of trapped emotions and sabotaging beliefs. If someone is coming to me to work together, they often have tried decades of other stuff, diets and fitness stuff. And, how many diets have you tried? Like 45, or more. And they're frustrated and they don't know what else to do. And maybe they've had a glimpse into energy healing and they know a little bit about tapping. So they're already kind of intrigued and they know there has to be something better out there. And there is, and that's usually how we get together.
Great. So then, pragmatically, what does some of that look like? How do we approach and step into that and find and clear and that sort of stuff?
We do some tapping. Yeah. But what I do, so how do we step into it? You mean how would a regular client step into this?
Okay, great. So let me reframe the question a slightly different way. So for example, more and more, I'm thinking about tapping as a tool. not as an approach. And there are lots of different approaches that I can use with tapping, because there is a difference between me regulating my motion and emotion. Okay, we're having a little bit of a technical issue here. I'm going to reset something on my side. I'm going to be back in just a second. We're going to get you back to the exact same spot in the interview with Karen. And so we are tapping. How are you approaching the issues that, because just because I'm tapping on my body doesn't mean that I'm going to be successful. We want to frame it in a way where we're incrementally stepping into it, where we're actually seeing benefit from that. So I guess that's a more precise way of asking the question.
Yes, thank you. So I think I'll just summarize what happens in a typical session in the program that I lead. And we start every session by doing some sort of technique to calm down the fight or flight response and get more centered. It could be the gamut point. It could be some tapping. It could be some other modality. And we practice that on purpose so that people have that tool. That's what I call it too. You have a tool in your toolbox. So the next time you're driving down the street, past McDonald's, you have a tool that you can use that will keep you driving instead of turning into the parking lot. So every week we're practicing a very practical tool that you can do in the moment. I saw one of the summits from last year where you were talking about doing some discrete tapping, like on fingertip points and stuff. Yeah. Things like that too. You're in the middle of a meeting and you need a tool because you're so stressed out, or you're having an argument with a partner and you need to do something so that you don't just raid the refrigerator when you're done. So we practice tools on a regular basis so that those become a part of what our brain knows. We have an option. We have a tool.
Yeah, and I want to stick a pin in that because I love that.
Yes.
That and this is true not for emotional eating, but any place that we find ourselves where there's an emotional trigger out there in the world. Practicing using the tool in a controlled, well-resourced state, sitting with my practitioner, having a conversation that's planning, makes it so much easier for us to do stuff. And so for all, as we're thinking about creating transformation in our lives, the place I want to create transformation, I want to practice that persistently, doing it in a well-resourced state so I'm able to reach for it when I'm struggling. So I just want to stick a pin in that before we continue on.
Very
I think that is
important.
A brilliant insight. Yeah.
It is. You're creating a neural pathway right in that moment, and you want to reinforce it and reinforce it. And then we put some visualization with that as well. So it might be visualizing that you're headed to the pantry and, I'm using my tool right now, my tapping, instead of heading to the pantry for a box of cookies.
And I love that because what you're doing is oftentimes, there's been a number of research studies that have shown if we simply visualize having an outcome, it demotivates us to take action because we're getting the feeling. What you're doing here is we don't want to just practice the tool. We want to see ourselves struggling, reaching for the tool and overcoming the struggle. That's the way we create those neural pathways. And so I totally love the way that you're explaining that because I've seen that in my own personal experience in my own life. And again, not just for cravings, for everything that we want to overcome with tapping, the way you're teaching it, I love.
Thank you. And just as a side note, I'll share, I use it in all areas of my life as well. And one area where I can see other profound results besides food is on the golf course. So I've actually started helping people learn how to use these tools when they're out golfing so that after they just blow it, they don't the next 10 holes aren't awful and they can get their shit together in their head and they can finish out the round. And so now I get to do retreats for that as well, which is great. So it's applicable for everything.
Yeah. It is always good when we have the ability to respond to being a shankopotamus so we don't stay stuck in that particular place.
Right. I agree.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah, so that's the first thing we do in every session is we practice those tools, we visualize, we have the intention that we're going to use them when we need them, and that's very, very helpful. Then the second part, the major part of each session, is that we do tapping on deeper issues that are involved with cravings and emotional eating. So there are some pretty major themes like not feeling safe in your body, not believing you can be successful, having being bullied and teased about your weight or always being put on diets, never having any sort of a connection, emotional connection. A lot of the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, are things that we work on. So in each of those sessions, we take a deeper dive into a topic and do tapping on it. And that's where everybody really gets to use tapping on a very personal level. Like, what is going on for you? Why don't you feel safe to be at a lower weight in your body? What didn't you receive as a child that is causing you to go and get food now for comfort and for love? So that is very, very powerful. That's what I call the let go of the emotional baggage part of the program. You're clearing out those traumas. You're getting rid of old beliefs. Absolutely crucial. But the follow-up part to that is that we really do need to create some new beliefs in our subconscious mind. Otherwise, it's like, well, I'm all healed up, but where do I go now? So we need to tell our reticular activating system, that part of the brain, what we want it to focus on. So it's good to get rid of the old beliefs, but we have to create some new ones.
So before we kind of transition into the new beliefs, I think one of the things that you're hitting on there with these old beliefs is like, and I've just seen this firsthand with my own clients, is like, oftentimes the places that families have to spend time together is around the mealtime table.
Absolutely.
That's the place where we have the least amount of agency who we spend our time with. And we're now in a circumstance where we have the food thing going on in our life with whatever conflict is going on inside of our family system, since we're now forced to be around that place, so it makes a lot of sense that there is the stories that are causing me to feel unsafe in the world. And the fact that they are attached to food makes a lot of sense, because those are we do that multiple times a day, most of us, or circumstance consistent. We're doing it once a day with our family at least. And like the fact that those two things get knit together, I think it's good that we're recognizing that.
They are so knit together. I don't want to say ridiculous in a demeaning way, but they are so connected that it's such a powerful connection. And when we have that, it's really hard to break free of those attachments. But it can be in a good way or a bad way. It can be a good connection in that you always use food for joyous occasions and it's a reward, and you know that that's going to make you feel good and you can't break free from doing that. Or it could be that things were so awful that you used food to feel better, and that becomes your go-to. Like, food really does become love or comfort or nurturing. And why on earth would you want to give that up? And it makes sense. Like, it makes like something like, oh, food is nurturing. Well, that's because it only is, like that's the reason why we're eating. Like, there actually is a practical nurturing element to it. And the fact that emotionally and psychologically, we're graphing all of those other types of nurture onto a thing that is so practical. Cause the reality is like there are things that can cause me emotional struggle that I can avoid. I can avoid alcohol. I can avoid snakes. I can't avoid food. Like, that's not something that I don't like. I mean, I can, but there are really severe consequences to that particular thing. Sure.
And so that complicates all of this. Like, we have who we're eating with, how we deal with food inside of our families, inside of our past, compounded by the fact that I can't stop this thing because I can't survive if I do.
Right. And you're right. It's life sustaining. We have to have food. And I think that's one thing that really bothered me about, I am a dietitian, but I always hated telling a person, you can't have a particular food. So like, I would have a person come to me, the doctor would say, you need to tell them to stop drinking, Mountain Dew every day, a 6-pack of Mountain Dew. That's terrible for them. I'm like, well, sure, that is on a physical level. But right now, that's where they're getting their comforting and their love and nurturing from. So I think of it as like, if you have a baby who has a pacifier and you take that pacifier away, but you don't give that baby any other way to soothe, that's horrible, right? So if we take the food away from a person, but we haven't given them any other coping skills or way to feel loved or comforted or soothed, we have done them a disservice, I think. And I hated doing that.
And I think what you're doing is super valuable, like talking about this, because like, if my subconscious mind thinks white chocolate Reese's peanut butter cups, bringing those up for no apparent reason at all. We're just a random example that we're going to grab out of the air. Like, I love what you're saying here, because oftentimes it's like, because I know on an intellectual level, that is not healthy for me to be consuming them or consuming lots of them. And I'm setting myself up for failure if I'm just simply ripping the thing away that's providing me soothing without putting something in there. And so I love the fact that what you're saying is the first step is reorganizing and re-understanding our relationship to safety and comfort before we step into and transforming food and that sort of stuff, because it's like the food is the problem, therefore I need to change the food. Like that's a coherent, logical plan, assuming we don't take into account the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind operates to keep us safe. And so what you're doing is you're not thinking about the action, you're thinking of the human in context. And I think that's such a valuable part of transformation is recognizing that I am a being that is doing the transformation. I'm not just trying to act in a new way. And so I can imagine the relief your clients express emotionally when your first step isn't, great, let's get rid of all of these things that are doing that. Let's talk about something else before we even get there. That I can see it being an easier journey, which is going to make it more successful for me as I navigate that.
I love how you just phrased that right there. That nailed it. And that was a beautiful way to say that, because you're right on everything that you said. And if you don't take into account our humanness and you just say, well, those are bad calories, that's a bunch of sugar or carbs or whatever, you can't have that. That actually most often triggers people back into deprivation and restriction and all of this stuff from before. And they're pretty much like, screw you, I'm going to have whatever I want. That never works.
And there is a psychological phenomenon with the subconscious mind called the extinction burst, where if I'm depriving myself of a tool, as that tool is about to go extinct, the subconscious mind, I'm going to lose the tool, and it bursts back onto the scene. And that's the reason why we might have 4 or 5 days of good eating, and then on the 5th day, it's not bad eating, it's all of the bad eating of every calorie that has ever been created in the universe. I'm going to consume them in one day, because the subconscious mind is trying to cling back onto this soothing tool. And my conscious mind has deprived myself for a certain amount of time. And the fact that it comes roaring back makes sense, except we beat ourselves up for it because we're weak and we're failing and all of that sort of stuff.
Right. Which then just gives more fuel to the fire of wanting to
absolutely. I have more negative emotions that I need to soothe and do all of that sort of stuff.
Guilt and shame are not motivators.
No, they're really, really good for about 3.5 seconds. They are not long-term motivators.
Exactly. That's what I tell. Oh, I felt really guilty. And so, or the doctor will say, you're going to die if you don't go see the dietitian. That's long enough to make the appointment, but that's all it does.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's not wander our bag back before I took us off in this little detour. So the third thing you were talking about was installing and creating new beliefs, new tools, new approaches to the world. What does that look like, at least at a high level?
Yeah, at a high level, that means that we want to figure out, what do we really want to have happen? Because sometimes we have no clarity on that. It's like, well, how do you want to eat? I don't know. How do you want your food to look in your life? How do you want your relationship with your food to be, or even with yourself? And so we get clarity on the direction that we want to go. And then we use tapping and some other energy modalities to actually just integrate that into your subconscious mind. And then some practicing of that afterwards, so that it really sticks. Visualization, setting the intentions, and so on. And that becomes very, very powerful. And you also want to do that in a state, like during a session where you're with a practitioner and you're calm. That's the time to create a new belief, rather than in the middle of a crisis, like, oh my gosh, I need a new belief here. Probably not going to happen. Your brain is all chaotic. You have a lot of stress hormones going on. So we create that in a calm state. We visualize it and practice it. And then it becomes our reality, which is so fun.
Yeah. And again, I love what you're saying about that is go back to this, application of tapping. In the moment, the application of tapping is feeling a little better and maybe reducing the craving. Yes. It's not installing a new, it's not installing a new belief. It makes absolutely no sense that when I am, driving a car and sliding on the ice, trying to learn a new way to drive in that particular moment. In that particular moment, I'm just trying to avoid bumping into as many things as possible. Right. Then we can have a conversation about, do I replace my tires? Do I do something different? Do I whatever to be able to navigate that in the future? And I think it's also good for us to hear that, because for those of us who've experienced the power of transformational tools like tapping and otherwise, when when I am successful once, it's really easy for my subconscious mind to now create the standard. I'm always going to be successful with this tool. And a significant part of success is it means I'm meeting a standard. And if my standard in the moment is to change the way that I'm thinking so I make good choices all the time, that's probably not a really good standard in the moment of something. Where the standard in the moment is, boy, maybe I'm only going to eat one of those Reese's peanut butter cups instead of 9 of them. And that becomes a victory, even though I'm indulging in that thing. And so, like, again, separating the idea of the response in the moment and creating these new neural pathways, the way that we're changing, responding in the moment, healing the past, by doing that at distance in the container that is the session with a skilled practitioner, man, does that set us up for success in a completely different way.
It totally does. And isn't it, on that note, isn't it just amazing that we can actually create new neural pathways? I mean, when this dawned on me several years ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, we can create new pathways in our brain.
Well, and not only is that like great when we discovered that, like that is a discovery in our lifetime.
Yes.
Like not just that we as an individual are understanding that, like, you know, the field of science and research, like that is in our lifetime that we realize neuroplasticity and new brain cells being created. Like, you know, we used to think, you know, your brain's done and that's it. And you're stuck with those brain cells. And so, so like, and the other thing is like, it's encouraging to know that like, you know, I can create these new paths. It's not that I'm creating a tool that is going to help me be a better fighter in the moment of something going poorly. It does that. And it is a tool that allows us to do these other things as well, to transform, to create those new paths and those new ways of thinking. Awesome. So great. So would it be possible in any of the places that we've hit along the way, if you could lead us through some useful tapping that you see? And again, it could be short-term, how we do something in the moment. It could be unearthing, like, you know, how can we do some tapping right now?
We're going to do it. And I'm going to pull out one more tool that I use in my classes and my programs. And these are what I call my magic glasses. Okay, we have a red pair and we have a green pair. All right. So imagine for just a moment, there's a line here, kind of like on a thermometer, and everything below the line is a negative. It could be the negative temperature, but for our purposes, it's a negative belief or a negative emotion like guilt or shame or fear, or I can't lose weight. Okay. And everything above the line is a positive emotion or a positive belief. I am releasing weight. I am empowered, joy, bliss, and happiness. We know from science that those have a higher frequency than these emotions here. So I call all of these emotions that are below the line, they're in the red zone. Okay. So if you have a belief of, I can't release the weight, you have on basically glasses. Okay, I wake up in the morning and I'm putting on my I can't release the weight glasses. Yeah. And everything that you do and see and experience is based on these glasses. Like they are running the show behind the scenes. And you're basically setting yourself up to attract more of that energy. Oh, see, I have a craving. I have emotional eating. I don't feel safe, and so on. So this becomes the lens that you experience your life through, and you stay stuck here. So we spend a lot of time in the program getting rid of these red zone beliefs and putting on the green glasses. Everybody gets a free pair. I think they're wonderful. And these are the beliefs like, well, I am empowered. I am successful. I'm choosing to live in this vibration and to attract this energy into my life. And it's amazing what that perspective, it's more than a perspective, but it's a belief. But what that does for your chances for success in every area of your life, whether it's weight loss or relationships or money or so on. So we use this all the time to really drive home the point. What glasses do you want to be wearing today? Are you taking these old beliefs with you, or are you taking some new beliefs with you? So sometimes we'll even put on these beliefs if we're doing some tapping. So imagine that you have them on and you can think of a belief, Jean, that is negative for you, or maybe our listeners today have a belief that they can't lose weight. Let's use that as an example. That's pretty common. All right. So we can start on this side of the hand. even though I have this belief that I can't release the weight.
Even though I have this belief that I can't release the weight.
And I can't keep it off.
And I can't keep it off.
I love and accept myself anyway.
I love and accept myself anyway.
Even though I have this belief that I can't lose weight.
Even though I have this belief I can't lose weight.
I can't keep it off.
And I can't keep it off.
I'm open to the possibility of this changing.
I'm open to the possibility of this changing.
Even though I've had this belief forever.
Even though I've had this belief forever.
Okay, so let's start tapping through the points. And as you're tapping and others are tapping, just please continue tapping. And I'm going to demonstrate, if we have a tabletop, we use the tabletop a lot in tapping, there might be many, many legs to this table, right? There might be, well, all those diets that I went on and this program and that program, and then I lost weight and then I gained it back. So we could have a lot of table legs that we're tapping on, really for any topic, okay? So we would focus on those table legs. Everyone's going to have their own set of legs to tap on. And that's very effective to think about knocking out those legs and crumbling that table. But another way to look at that as well is to really tune into, how does this belief feel in your body? Okay. And most of the time, a negative belief is going to feel pretty heavy, like, oh, this is really heavy. It makes me feel ashamed, or I have a lot of guilt about this. I feel like a nauseous feeling in my gut, or something in my chest, or tension in my neck. So we're tapping on that feeling that we're having as well about that belief, with the intention, of course, of bringing down the intensity of that feeling, tapping it away. We might, also take a look at, what does this belief look like visually? So for some people, they'll tell me that it looks like shackles around my ankles, or it's this heavy weight on my head, or I feel like I'm encased in a vault and there's no way that I can escape. So we're bringing in legs to the table, but also, what are we feeling about this belief, or how does it make us feel? And what does it look like?
You know, and as we've been going through this, for me, it's felt like twists through the solar plexus.
Okay.
And as we've done, and what's been interesting as we've been tapping, and you've been talking about aspects and stuff like that, is like the twist has gone tighter, looser, tighter, looser. There's been some a little like nauseousness that's going along. Not like I'm going to throw up, but like, there's some churning that's going along with it. And what's interesting, you know, just because I'm tapping into just listening to you, but still paying attention, is it's kind of like writing a little bit of a wave inside of the system of, so it's not just diminishing intensity, but it's kind of like going, woo, woo, woo. Maybe not that quickly, but that's kind of the pulsing sensation of the sensation.
Okay. So are you still feeling that?
It's reducing quite a bit. Yeah. Okay. As we're talking, it keeps going down. Yeah.
Okay. So Jean just very nicely demonstrated how just tapping can bring down the intensity of the wave and the emotions that were going on, because we weren't even really talking about the issue at that time. You and I were just chatting, but I know we both know the benefit of just tapping. And that's what we're doing right now. So we can just tap and be thinking about the topic, but we can also focus in on the things that I mentioned, what's going on with the different aspects or the table legs. And you may have many. And sometimes a table leg will come up and you're like, whoa, that's a big table leg. I will need to do a bit more tapping on that. Tuning into how your body is feeling. If that nauseous feeling that Jean was feeling is coming down a little bit more. And also, did you have any sort of a visual? You said it was like a wave through the solar plexus?
Yeah, just through the body. Yeah. It was just, you know, as we were tuning into, it's not possible for me to lose weight. That's the place that it physically landed as I was thinking about that particular thing. And just have been continuing to just tune in and just, you know, and it's interesting is that even as that is transforming, going up and down, the entire body is feeling lighter everywhere else. So even though like there's the intensity and it's not as intense as it was, but like I can also just feel like I wasn't feeling tense before.
Yeah.
I certainly feel more relaxed as I'm
Nice. Nice. So that is definitely the power of tapping, is that we're bringing down the intensity of whatever is going on, whether it's an emotion or a sabotaging belief, or we have a visual or a deeper trauma. And I think that really just sums up the beauty. Like tapping, I used to think, how could tapping work on everything? Well, it does, because it's everything that's going on inside of your mind and your heart.
Right.
Your subconscious knows, and like you don't have to be an expert on a particular subject. Your mind and your heart are going to take care of that for you, and it's beautiful. It just the way it brings down. I did a little bit of tapping this morning before, just to get my day going and to feel grounded. It's like, oh, that was wonderful. So it brings the intensity down of everything.
Awesome. Well, excellent. Well, Karen, I really appreciate your time and just thinking about this in just such a thoughtful, deliberate way, and giving ourselves permission that we don't have to deal with this as an issue, but thinking about these gentle entry points, which make it so much easier for us to make progress and move forward in that way.
Thank you. And I absolutely want to thank you for all that you do. I finally got to meet you in person, and that is amazing. You're wonderful. I've really enjoyed this. And what you're doing is incredible for the fundraising that you're doing for the Peaceful Heart organization. Powerful, important work. Unfortunately, so desperately needed, but definitely needed. And what an amazing tool that you're giving to people and helping them. And I can't even thank you enough for the impact that you're making worldwide. It brings some tears to my eyes. Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Appreciate your time, Karen.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jean.
If you found this interview inspiring, I would encourage you to support the Peaceful Heart Network by going to 24hoursoftapping.com/support or clicking the link in the description. And you will see on the screen right now a playlist to all of the interviews from this year's and last year's 24 Hours of Tapping. I hope you enjoyed those as well.